There's a clue in Los Angeles that is not screaming, but it is sitting right there for anyone who knows where to look. Mike McDaniel changed Justin Herbert's entire offense. Tight end, running back, fullback, offensive line, movement, tempo, all of it, except the central bet on Quentin Johnston. And when a new coordinator moves almost every piece in the house but leaves one piece exactly where it is, that does not feel random. Drop a like if you're reading that signal too, because this script starts right there. The interesting part is that a lot of people expected a different message from the Chargers. After everything Quentin Johnston has already gone through in the NFL, after the drops, the criticism, the frustration with missed targets, and the natural pressure that comes with being a first-round pick, it would have been easy to picture Los Angeles trying to cover up the problem with a bigger name. But the roster told a different story behind the scenes. The franchise picked up his fifth-year option, did not bring back Keenan Allen in a major reunion, did not make an aggressive move for another established receiver, and added Brennan Thompson as speed, not as somebody ready to rip Johnston's role away right now. To me, that is the kind of silence that says plenty, because a fifth-year option does not hand out snaps by itself. A plan does, and the plan seems to be telling us McDaniel looks at Johnston and sees a role the old offense may never have fully unlocked. Yards after the catch. YAC. That short throw that turns into a big problem. That pass that looks controlled, then suddenly breaks an angle, changes the pursuit, and becomes an explosive play. And this is the behind-the-scenes detail that really gets my attention. McDaniel has already been around offenses where players like Deebo Samuel and Tyreek Hill got room to turn touches into damage. I'm not saying Johnston is those guys. That is not the point. The point is that this coordinator knows how to build an environment for athletes with strength, acceleration, and the ball in their hands. Johnston gave us the clue himself when he said that in college, he was a big yards after catch guy, and that he got fired up when McDaniel introduced some of those ideas in meetings and at practice. That matters because Johnston's issue has not been raw talent. It has been confidence, consistency, and fit. Across 3 seasons, he has averaged 13 yards per catch overall, but he has caught only 144 of 243 targets. With Justin Herbert, that cannot carry an offense trying to fight in the AFC. But we also cannot act like the context was clean. Herbert and Johnston went through coordinator changes, a rigid Greg Roman offense last year, an injured offensive line, unstable protection, and Johnston still put up 8 touchdowns for the second straight year. So the real read is not, everything is fixed now. The real read is more interesting. The Chargers are giving Johnston the best structure of his career to prove whether there is production inside that potential. A more modern offense, more disguise, more space, more horizontal stress, more conflict for the defense, and more ways to get the ball into his hands without asking him to win the same way every single time. And I'll say it, that is a bold bet. Because if Johnston keeps struggling with drops and inconsistency, everybody is going to point at the front office and ask why they didn't bring in more security. But if McDaniel reads this right, if Johnston becomes a real yak weapon, if Trey Harris and Keandre Lambert-Smith keep growing behind him, then the conversation changes completely. Suddenly, what looked like a lack of movement starts looking like real internal conviction. The Chargers are not just waiting for Johnston to get better. They seem to be building the offense to find out, once and for all, whether he can become an impact piece for Herbert. And that answer could change the ceiling of this receiver room before any big name ever walks through the door. And when the conversation moves from Johnston to Tyreek Hill, the room gets hotter. Because betting on internal development is one thing. Looking at a possibility that was linked to the Chargers months ago and wondering whether that door might still be cracked open near training camp, that is a completely different kind of conversation. That is the type of name that does not land on the board without shaking the room. Tyreek Hill, even entering his 11th season and already 32 years old, still represents an idea that scares defenses before the snap. Vertical speed, fear over the top, broken angles, and that feeling that a routine catch can turn into a touchdown in 2 cuts. Put that next to Justin Herbert's arm. You do not have to stretch your imagination very far. The deep ball carries a different weight. The coverage backs up. The safety thinks twice. Lad McConkey works with more space. Quentin Johnston sees less compressed defense. The whole offense breathes differently. But the real layer here is not just shine, it is calculation. Keenan Allen still has not returned to the Bolts, and this receiver group has talent, youth, speed, McConkey as a reliable target, Johnston trying to flip the switch, Trey Harris, Keandre Lambert-Smith, Darius Davis, and Brennan Thompson. But it is missing that established veteran presence, the guy who has seen everything, who understands preparation, route detail, coverage reads, big weeks, big games, big pressure. Hill has 8 Pro Bowls and 5 first-team All-Pro selections. That carries weight in a young room, especially when the goal is to maximize Herbert's window right now, not in some comfortable future. And then there's the Mike McDaniel connection. That detail cannot get skipped. This is not just famous receiver in a new offense. McDaniel knows the kind of stress Hill puts on a defense. He knows the value of speed that forces opponents to play scared. And when a coordinator is trying to install an explosive identity in Los Angeles, any player who has already lived in that language becomes, at minimum, a serious behind-the-scenes discussion. Then comes the part that separates excited fandom from grown-up analysis: the knee. The injury Hill suffered in Week 4 of 2025 was too serious to treat like a footnote. A dislocated left knee, ACL, meniscus, and patellar tendon injuries. For any player, that is brutal. For a smaller veteran receiver whose main weapon has always been explosion, it is a massive question. Reports may point to progress and a chance to be ready for Week 1 of 2026, but any Chargers decision would have to come from medical evaluation, cost, role, and a real expectation of speed. That is why I do not read Hill as cheap fantasy. I read him as an ambition test. If the price is outrageous, Los Angeles has to stay cold. If the burst is not coming back, they have to resist the name. But if the body responds, if the cost makes sense, and if McDaniel believes there is still vertical damage left, then the conversation gets serious. Herbert does not need an empty headline. He needs weapons that change how a defense behaves. And Tyreek Hill, healthy enough, can still change a defense before the ball even leaves the quarterback's hand. The tone has to shift a little here, because when we're talking about lad McConkey and a hamstring, this is not about empty toughness. It is about intelligence. And I know every Chargers fan wants to see this offense fully on the field as fast as possible, especially with Mike McDaniel installing a new system. But that is exactly the trap. Rush now to make things look fine, then pay for it when training camp starts. McConkey suffered a left hamstring injury during the Chargers off-season program, and that kind of issue always deserves respect. A hamstring is not a swollen ankle you test in warm-ups and move on from. It is a tricky injury because a player can feel better, try to come back, push one sprint, and suddenly the whole calendar starts bleeding. McConkey said it himself. There is no reason to rush it, push too hard, and create a setback that spills into training camp. And there is a behind-the-scenes detail in his comment that I really like. McConkey is not treating this pause like forced vacation. He said he had to shift his mindset because he cannot get the physical reps, so the question became, what can he do mentally to make up that gap? That sounds simple, but inside a new offense it is huge. McDaniel is not just changing a few calls. He is changing timing, spacing, reads, pre-snap motion, route details, and communication with Herbert. For McConkey, that matters a lot. He has already shown he can be Herbert's reliable target. His rookie season in 2024 was ridiculous for a player just entering the league. 82 catches, 1,149 yards, and 7 touchdowns. Last year, the production dipped to 66 catches, 789 yards, and 6 touchdowns, while he still helped the Chargers make the playoffs for the second straight season. But that opening playoff game against the Patriots exposed something rough. Los Angeles needs more offensive flow when the pressure rises. So yes, McConkey's health is central, not because he is the only path for this offense, but because he is the kind of receiver who gives Herbert rhythm. He separates, understands space, offers security over the middle, and can be the glue between McDaniel's designs and real Sunday execution. For now, this does not sound like internal panic, but monitoring it into July is mandatory. If McConkey returns at the right time without reckless rushing, he can enter camp ready to rebuild timing. If there is a setback, the receiver puzzle gets a lot more tense. That is the point. The Chargers need ambition, absolutely, but they also need to protect the pieces that have already proven they work with Herbert. The last story is one a lot of people fly past, but serious teams do not. Because backup quarterback only becomes a topic when something goes wrong, and by then it is already late. Justin Herbert is the present and future of the Chargers. That is not up for debate. But the question behind him has started making a different kind of noise. Who holds this team steady if an emergency hits? And based on what has come out of the offseason program, Trey Lance may not be as comfortable as it looked. The context matters. Herbert spent part of this period throwing less and focusing more on fundamentals, mechanics, and adjusting to Mike McDaniel's offense. That is normal. When you have a quarterback at that level entering a new system, every detail of base, footwork, timing, and reads has to be tuned. But that lighter workload opens snaps for other quarterbacks, and that was exactly the kind of window Trey Lance needed to turn into an argument. But according to ESPN's Chris Rim, the name that took better advantage was DJ Uiagalelei. Rim called Uiagalelei the Chargers' biggest surprise so far during workouts, saying he stood out especially on intermediate and deep throws. That sentence changes the conversation, because if that continues into training camp, Uiagalelei could challenge Lance for the backup job. Look at the size of that detail. Lance came back in March on a one-year, $2.5 million deal. That shows the team still saw value in familiarity, demeanor, and some upside. But it is also not the contract of someone untouchable. It is a competition contract. And when a player like Uiagalelei starts stacking positive signs in the reps opened up by Herbert, the staff has to pay attention. And this is where the human part of the evaluation comes in. Uiagalelei has always been a big name, sometimes maybe even too heavy for his own path. 5-star recruit in high school, number 2 overall prospect in the 2020 class, size, arm, athleticism, 6'4", 252 pounds. But in college, all that promise never turned into steady dominance. That is why he arrives in the NFL with the label of a bet, not a ready-made answer. But a bet with real tools is still a bet worth testing. Trey Lance carries a different kind of weight. Being the number 3 overall pick in 2021 follows a player into every evaluation. Last season, he threw for 226 yards, no touchdowns, 1 interception across 4 games, with 1 start, and completed only 47.4% of his passes. When the league average was 64.3%, that number cannot be hidden behind potential. So I want to open the Bolt war room here. Would you rather keep Lance because of his experience inside the building, or give Uiagalelei room if he repeats this level in camp? Because to me, the answer should not come from the more famous name. It should come from execution. The Chargers have already learned that potential without production turns into an old promise. If DJ is processing well, attacking the middle, and pushing the ball downfield, he deserves to keep tightening this race. And that connects with everything we talked about today. McDaniel is reshaping the offense. Johnston is getting a designed opportunity. Hill appears as an explosive possibility. McConkey needs to return the smart way. And even the QB2 spot seems to be saying the same thing. In Los Angeles, nobody should win a role just off resume. This roster has to be decided by who helps Herbert, supports the plan, and delivers when practice turns into pressure. In the end, everything circles back to the same question. Are the Chargers building an offense that looks good on paper, or one that is ready to answer in January? Johnston is a conviction bet. Hill would be calculated risk. McConkey is a piece that has to be protected, and the Lance Uiagalelei battle shows even the depth is being tested. That is how a roster stops living off potential and starts demanding production in every room in the building. If you want to follow this transformation without the filter, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and stay locked in, because Los Angeles is entering a phase where every detail can change the plan.